Manpower. So this is 1,000 days into this war now. We remember it beginning with Russia's attempt at lightning strike into that country that would topple the government and give the entirety of Ukraine to the Kremlin. That didn't happen. It settled into this grinding, awful conflict. And now Donald Trump is back in office saying he's going to end it.
Let me just explain in 2 minutes the Ukraine war. This is not an attack by Putin on Ukraine in the way that we are told every day. This started in 1990. James Baker III, our Secretary of State, said to Mikhail Gorbachev, NATO will not move 1 inch eastward if you agree to German unification. The U.S. then cheated on this, already starting in 1994, when Clinton signed off on a plan to expand NATO all the way to Ukraine. This is when the so-called neocons took power. The expansion of NATO started in 1999 with Poland, Hungary, and Czech Republic. Then the U.S. led the bombing of Serbia in 1999. That was a use of NATO to bomb a European capital, Belgrade, 78 straight days to break the country apart. The Russians didn't like that very much. But even Putin started out pro-European, pro-American, actually. He asked maybe we should join NATO when there was still the idea of some kind of mutually respectful relationship. 9/11 came, then came Afghanistan, and the Russians said, yeah, we'll support you. We understand to root out terror. In 2002, the United States unilaterally walked out of the Anti-Ballistic Missile Treaty. What it did was trigger the U.S. putting in missile systems in Eastern Europe that Russia views as a dire, direct threat to national security. The U.S. then said, okay, now NATO's really going to enlarge. And Putin kept saying, stop. You promised no NATO enlargement. Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Bulgaria, Romania, Slovakia, Slovenia, 7 more countries in the not 1 inch eastward. On December 15th, 2021, Putin put on the table a draft Russia-U.S. security agreement. The basis of it is no NATO enlargement. The special military operation started. And 5 days later, Zelensky says, okay, neutrality. And then the United States and Britain said, no way. You guys fight on. We got your back. We don't have your front. You're all going to die. But we got your back. That's 600,000 deaths now of Ukrainians since Boris Johnson flew to Kyiv to tell them to be brave. Absolutely ghastly.
We're going to work on Middle East, and we're going to work very hard on Russia and Ukraine. It's got to stop. Russia and Ukraine's got to stop. Thousands and thousands, I saw a report today, thousands of people over the last 3 days were killed. Thousands and thousands of people were killed. They happen to be soldiers, but whether they're soldiers or they're people sitting in towns.
Russia is massing 50,000 troops. That includes North Korean soldiers for what looks to be a new offensive in Kursk. That's that region in Russia that has been partially occupied by Ukrainians.
Donald Trump has vowed to work on ending conflicts in the Middle East and in Ukraine. Do you have an idea of how it can do that? No, I don't have any idea, but we will be awaiting their proposals. And every time I have this question, I say that every politician who says that they are for peace and not for war, it certainly merits attention. But it all depends on the specific proposals. And President Putin has formulated our approach.
A military alliance between Kim Jong-un and President Putin now ratified by both sides, according to South Korean reports this morning. Despite talk of imposing a peace settlement, the war is escalating. Huge drone attacks rained down on Ukraine and Russia in recent days.
But so far, the Ukrainians had been holding them. There's an expectation now that Russia will attempt a bigger offensive to try and remove them. But it's not just in Kursk, also in eastern Ukraine. We're seeing Ukrainian forces under severe pressure at multiple points, in particular around the town of Kharkov, where there is now the risk that a large number of Ukrainian troops could find themselves surrounded. There's a risk there that the lines could crumble if the Russians manage to capture that town, which would be a very serious blow to Ukrainian forces in eastern Ukraine. But just in general, we're seeing that Ukrainian troops are under severe pressure at multiple points, and we hear from them that they are suffering in particular from shortages of manpower, and that they are very, very worried about the general direction of the war at the moment, Terry.
But the gist of it is different. The gist of it is that the so-called golden billion for centuries, for 500 years, they have practically lived off of other peoples. They were ripping apart these poor peoples, poor nations of Africa. They exploited Latin America. They exploited the countries of Asia. And of course, no one forgets this. And I have a feeling that it's not even about the leaders of these countries, even though it is a very important thing, but the common people of these countries. In their heart, they can feel what's happening. They can see our struggle for our independence, for our true sovereignty. And they see this connection with their aspirations to be truly independent, which is exacerbated by the fact that in the Western elites, there is a strong desire to freeze the current unfair state of things in international affairs. For centuries, they've been stuffing their stomachs with human flesh, and they've been stuffing their pockets with money, but they must realize that this ball of vampires is about to end.
Mr. Ambassador, probably the best place to start with all this is, it is notable that after, repeatedly emphasizing the president-elect, I never know whether they're calling him a former president or president-elect these days, emphasizing he believes in the power of swift and decisive military victories on the battlefield to bring about the end of the wars in Ukraine and, frankly, Gaza as well. He is now indicating, his team is giving indications, he may actually prefer to pursue some kind of negotiated peace. Are you getting that from the team? What do you make of that?
Well, it's a combination. What you hear from everybody is the phrase from the Reagan administration, which is peace through strength. And what President Trump and others have pointed out is we've had a period of what is seen very much, including in Ukraine, of American weakness. And this emboldened Vladimir Putin to attack. It emboldened the Iranians. It has emboldened President Xi in China. And in order to stop that, you actually have to push back. You have to show force. But then once you've done that, if you can bring this to a close, that would be the right thing to do. Nobody wants to extend a war. Nobody wants a longer war. But you have to, in order to do that, you have to convince Putin. Because Zelensky, obviously the Ukrainians want peace. They don't want to be attacked. They want to get on with their lives as a country. It's Putin that's doing the attacking. So you have to convince Putin that it's in his interest to stop. And that's going to require a lot more show of strength first.